Hello there, and welcome back for Chapter 3 of Finding Serendipity. Now, for those of you who are just catching up, this is the Tuesday McGillicuddy series by Angelica Banks. It's written by two authors. One of them is me, Heather Rose, and one of them is Danielle Wood, and together we made a pen name, Angelica Banks, to make things easy. Our books, as you all know, are published in Australia, America and Germany, and here is the American edition, and I'll share some of the illustrations again with you for this chapter 2. Now, I thought that I'd dress up today because I have a little exercise for you all at the end. So here I go. I'm just going to become Serendipity Smith again. So for those of you who've been watching these on Facebook, I have already dressed up as Serendipity, and as we learned in chapter 2, Serendipity dresses up like this, so she's in disguise. And the reason she does that is because it makes it possible for her and Dennis and Tuesday to go out in the world and live a completely normal life because no one recognises her. And I wonder if you would recognise me if you saw me out like this and then you saw me looking like I really look. So let's begin with chapter 3. Of course, what we know from chapter 1 and 2 is that Tuesday has come home from school. It's the last day of term for the week and the year. And she has waited to see if her mum, Serendipity Smith, the most famous writer in the world, is going to come downstairs because they're really hopeful she'll have finished the last book in her series, the Vivian Small series. But Serendipity doesn't come, does she? She goes missing. In fact, she goes missing out the window, and Tuesday decides to go and find Serendipity, hence the title of the book. And now Tuesday has also gone out the window, drawn up by a magic thread that happened as she was typing a story of her own. So here we are, Tuesday and Baxter are out in the night sky. Dennis, her dad, has waved them goodbye, indicating that there'll be blueberry pancakes for breakfast when they're home in the morning. Chapter 3, Finding Serendipity. All at once there was nothing but night. Tuesday's house was nowhere to be seen. With a shiver of fear, Tuesday realised that Brown Street itself had disappeared, as had City Park and her school too, and indeed the entire city in which she had spent her life so far. She was swimming in darkness. An enormous moon lit up remnants of cloud, and stars that were bigger and brighter than she had ever known stars to be blinked in the endless black. It was very quiet, other than a low rushing noise as she and Baxter were swept along behind the silver thread. The giddy feeling that had gripped Tuesday as she had been lifted into flight was evaporating, and Tuesday was beginning to worry about the fact that she was drifting high in a night sky with nothing more than a string of shimmering words and silvery sentences to keep her aloft. Baxter planted a reassuring lick on her cheek, then turned his face into the breeze with the same expression of blissful freedom that he had whenever he stuck his head out of the car window. If Baxter wasn't afraid, Tuesday thought, then perhaps she ought not to be afraid either. Maybe her mother did this all the time. Perhaps on those occasions when Tuesday had believed her mother to be curled up in her red velvet chair, Serendipity had actually been up here, flying away to where? There was no doubt that this was an adventure, Tuesday thought, and it occurred to her that she hadn't any first-hand experience in real adventures. All the adventures she had ever been part of had been with characters in books. She'd never actually had to scale towering cliffs or fight ferocious pirates or take a flying fox across a gaping ravine. She didn't like snakes, and she certainly couldn't, use a sword. She could swim, but she'd never tried to swim a rushing river. She couldn't shoot an arrow from a bow, and she'd never sailed a boat or even caught a fish. It was very hard to learn any of those things that you needed for an adventure when you lived in a city. The one thing she could do was run quite fast, but she usually finished second or third in the school races. That might come in handy if she had to run away in danger. although she wasn't sure running away was going to be much use in getting her mother back from wherever she was stuck. She might have to be braver than that. Soon Tuesday was approaching a vast cloud shaped like a moonlit lake. It was dark at the edges, but light was spilling from the middle. As they flew closer, Tuesday could see that in the centre of the lake of cloud was a small green hilltop with a single broad leafy tree. The thread of silver words stretching ahead was diving down towards the tree. It was as if the tree below had caught the long thread and was reeling Tuesday and Baxter in like fish on a line. In hardly any time at all, they made landfall. Tuesday tumbled onto the grass beside Baxter, who came to rest gracefully on all four paws. Hanging from the tree's branches just above Tuesday's head was her silver string. It rolled itself swiftly into a neat and compact ball that fell into her outstretched palm. It looked now like an ordinary ball of silver twine. She took a length of it between her hands and tugged. It was quite strong. Tuesday looked around. All there was to see was the tree and a hilltop covered in green grass and tiny white daisies. Whatever lay beyond was obscured by cloud. Tuesday examined the tree more closely. It seemed to her to be very old indeed. She walked a circle around its amazingly broad trunk, but she did not find her mother sitting up against it with her notebook in her hand. She peered up into the tree's wide and gnarly branches, but her mother was not perched among them. It was very quiet, as if Tuesday and Baxter were the only people in the universe. "Hello?" Tuesday called out. "Mum?" No answer came, not even an echo of Tuesday's own voice. "Hello? Hello, Mum?" Tuesday called again. Still no answer came. The tree's bright green leaves rustled, whispering to each other in some leafy language that Tuesday did not understand. Tuesday dropped the ball of thread, willing it to unravel and lead the way, but it fell to the ground. She nudged it with her foot, hoping that it would roll purposefully in one direction or another so that she might follow, but it simply sat there glinting slightly in the pale light. "What do I do now?" she asked the thread as she picked it up and rolled it about in her hands. "Follow the words? That's what Dad said, but how can I follow the words as if they don't go anywhere?" Tuesday looked to her dog for an answer, but he was busy sniffing out smells in the grass. "Oh, I don't know what to do," she moaned. Then a single leaf floated free from the tree and twirled down in front of Tuesday's face. She caught it by its stem and flattened it out on her palm where she could examine it carefully. It was a heart-shaped leaf, and like every other leaf Tuesday had ever seen, it had little tiny veins on it. But unlike the little veiny lines on any other leaf, this leaf had lines that had arranged themselves into what appeared to be writing. It was writing. Tuesday peered closely. She had to squint to make out the words written on the underside of the leaf. "Begin, start, commence, set off, strike out," she read. "Baxter," she called. "Doggo, look at this. Maybe these are the words we're supposed to follow. Begin, start." But Baxter's gaze was fixed on the sky. He gave a sharp bark as another silver strand of words appeared above them. It had been fashioned into a lasso, and it was whirling rapidly towards the tree. Tuesday instinctively ducked behind the tree trunk and called Baxter to her. With her arm around his middle, she could feel how his little body was tensed up, ready to spring into action if necessary. The loop of the lasso circled an outer branch of the tree and pulled tight. A person streaked through the air at great speed, turned a tidy forward flip, and landed on his feet. "Yes," he said, pumping the air with his fist. He looked to be only a few years older than Tuesday, a teenager with dark blonde hair, long gangly legs and arms, and a wide square face. He was wearing jeans, a t-shirt, runners, and a backpack. Peering cautiously around the tree, Tuesday watched as the boy attempted to free his lasso from the branch. "Come on," the boy said, yanking at the thread, and at last, in a blur of silver, the thread wound itself into a ball just as Tuesday's had done, though Tuesday noticed that the boy's ball of thread was much bigger than hers. The boy shrugged his backpack off and slipped the thread into one of its pockets. Evidently thinking himself to be alone, he then buried his index finger in one of his nostrils, picked out a bogey, and chewed it off the end of his fingertip. Tuesday pulled a face. When she sneaked another look, the boy was facing the tree. Tuesday drew back, grateful for the size of the trunk. She wasn't sure why she was hiding, but it seemed like a good idea until she knew a little more. Action-packed thriller, the boy said, as if he was speaking to the tree. Heroes, bad guys, radical plot twists, plenty of explosions. One of the tree's lower branches sprouted a russet-coloured pod that burst out into a weather-beaten leather jacket and a pair of commando-style boots. The boy sat on the other side of the tree and slipped off his runners. He struggled to loosen the laces of the enormous boots and wedge his feet inside. "Couldn't you make them with Velcro?" he asked as he got himself into an awful tangle involving the various holes and metal hooks that the laces had to be poked through and wound around. After hearing this struggle go on for some minutes, Tuesday slipped from her hiding place. "Would you like a hand with those?" she asked. The boy looked up and stared at Tuesday, who found herself acutely aware that she was wearing pyjamas, her favourite cupcake pyjamas that she had mostly grown out of at the ankles and the wrists. "It's just that I'm good with laces," she continued, "and you seem to be having a bit of trouble." The boy shook his head decisively. "No way," he said. "I don't have girls in my books. Look, the dog maybe," he said, eyeing Baxter, "but not girls, so be off." He flicked his hand at Tuesday as if she were an annoying insect to be shooed away. "I'm sorry, but I think there's been a misunderstanding," said Tuesday. "I don't want to be in your book." "Good," said the boy. He stood up, leaving his laces wound haphazardly about the tops of his boots. "That will never do," said Tuesday. "You'll trip over. Sit down." To her surprise, the boy did sit down. Tuesday made short work of weaving the laces in the necessary crosswise pattern and finishing off with a sturdy double knot. "Ha, thanks," said the boy, looking down at the boots, pleased. "So what are you doing here?" "I'm looking for my mother," said Tuesday, sitting down beside the boy. "She didn't come home last night, you see, so I was fiddling with her typewriter, and then this silvery thread—" Tuesday pulled her mysterious ball of thread out of her pocket, and the boy's eyes grew wide. "What the... You're a... Oh, I see. Hey," said the boy uncertainly. "Hey," said Tuesday, not sure what the boy was saying. His expression was curious, cautious even. "What's your name?" he asked. "Tuesday," said Tuesday. "Tuesday McGillicuddy." "Never heard of you," he said suspiciously. "Why should you have heard of me?" Tuesday asked, confused. "Okay," he said slowly. "So this is your first time here, right?" "Yes," Tuesday confirmed. The boy raised his eyebrows and gave an unfriendly little chuckle. "Well, you've got a long way to go then," he said. "Just so you know, I'm Blake Luckhurst. The Blake Luckhurst," he added, pointing a finger at himself. His name did vaguely ring a bell, but Tuesday couldn't quite place it. Seeing Tuesday's blank face, he continued, "First published at 12, million books sold by the time I was 13, 2 films in the making, Jack Bonner, my hero, best-selling action figure last Christmas, in case you've been living on the moon." Blake Luckhurst had a very annoying way of speaking, as if to converse with Tuesday at all was wasting both his time and his intelligence. "Oh, so you're a writer," said Tuesday, thinking out loud. "Oh, yesterday. You are so fast," said Blake sarcastically. "And I guess you're thinking of becoming a writer too. Or is it him?" he snorted, pointing at Baxter. "Got a shaggy dog story, fella?" Baxter gave an offended ruff and cocked his head. "It's Tuesday," she corrected, in case he had somehow misheard her name, though she suspected he hadn't. Tuesday was used to being teased about her name, but she had learned that if she didn't get upset about the teasing, it eventually stopped. "And this is Baxter," she continued. "As a matter of fact, neither of us is a writer. My mother is the writer, and we're here to find her." "Well," said Blake, "if you're lucky, your story might not completely suck. Meanwhile, I've got a publisher breathing down my neck, so I'm off to the end. Ciao, yesterday." With that, Blake Luckhurst picked up his backpack and walked away. "The end?" Tuesday asked, jumping to her feet and following him. "I think my mother's at the end. You see, she's lost and I'm trying to find her. Could I come with you?" Blake looked at Tuesday incredulously. "Yeah, right," he said, then strode away in earnest. "Wait!" yelled Tuesday, racing down the hill after him. "Blake, wait! Please wait!" Baxter, picking up the scent of a chase, hurtled downhill, overtaking Tuesday and barking excitedly. Just as Blake was about to step into the whiteness of the cloud bank ahead, Baxter caught the ankle of his jeans neatly between his front teeth. The boy shook his leg, trying to loosen Baxter's grip on his trousers, but Baxter only stared up at him stubbornly. Blake ran his fingers through his mop of blonde hair and tried to smile at Tuesday as if he thought that might help. "Come on, we're all friends here yesterday," he said. "Tell your dog to let go." "First tell me the way to the end," said Tuesday fiercely. "You don't know anything, do you?" said Blake. Tuesday glared at him. "Well, I know two things," she said. "You pick your nose and eat it, and you can't even tie your own shoelaces, so I don't know why you think you're so great." Blake's face reddened. "Okay, fair enough," said Blake in a softer voice, "but it's like storytelling kindergarten. You can't get to the end unless you've been to the beginning and the middle. I mean, that's how books work." "Well, thank you for that illuminating insight into the basic structure of a story," said Tuesday, "but I don't want to write a story. I told you I want to get to the end and find my mother because that's where she's stuck. Can you at least tell me, am I close? Is it far?" "Yesterday," said Blake, "you're nowhere near the end. This hillside here, this is the beginning." And suddenly Tuesday understood. She understood that she was in the place where stories happen because somehow she'd been mistaken for a writer. And she had no idea how to go on or how to get back again. Just thinking about how far she was from home made Tuesday's throat tight and her eyeballs prickly. She gulped and blinked in a valiant attempt not to cry, but despite her very best efforts, one fat tear escaped from each eye and ran down her cheeks. "Oh no," said Blake awkwardly. "Boy, I'm glad I never had sisters. Look, you can't cry, not on your first day. It'll be all right. Really, I mean, you've begun. Look at your thread. Come on. You've done something that's incredibly hard to do. You got liftoff. Now you just have to go on." "But how?" said Tuesday, her voice quavering. Blake sighed. "Look, I've got a deadline, right? So this has to be quick. Listen up." Sensing things had changed, Baxter released Blake's jeans. "Sometimes," said Blake, "getting to the end can take years. Of course, for me, it's usually only 8 or 10 weeks at the longest." "Weeks?" Tuesday cried. "I can't take weeks. I need to be home by breakfast." Blake sighed. "Hey, chill. Time here and time at home are different. It's like, Narnia. Sometimes you get home thinking you've been away for weeks and you find no time has passed at all. Other times you get home and you realize you've actually been gone for days. That freaks people out, I can tell you." "Well, can I fly to the end the same way I flew here?" Tuesday asked hopefully. "Nope," said Blake. "So how do I get there?" Tuesday asked. "Do what everyone does. Make it up as you go along. If you're good enough, you'll get there." "And if I'm not good enough?" Tuesday asked, frowning. Blake flicked his fringe out of his face and shrugged nonchalantly. "I've never had that problem." Tuesday felt tears gathering. "Okay," said Blake. "I don't think you're getting it." He sighed. "I'll take you to the librarian. After that, I'm gone. Got it?" "The librarian? There's a library here?" Tuesday asked. "Yep, one giant library. Right out of my way," said Blake. "But the librarian would never forgive me if I left you here." He scrutinized Tuesday's pajamas. "You might want to get changed first." "Oh dear," said Tuesday in a small voice. "I didn't bring anything else to wear." Blake flicked his hand again. "Talk to the tree. I'll wait over there, but hurry up." Blake strode away. Baxter followed close at his heels with the clear intention of making sure Blake did not leave without taking Tuesday with him. Tuesday hurried back to the tree. "Hello," she said in her politest voice. She felt silly talking to a tree, but she continued, "I need, But what did she need? What clothing did you wear to go in search of a lost mother? If there were to be snow-capped mountains, then possibly she might need furs. If there were islands and beaches, she might need bathers and a large hat. If there were castles and royalty, then a ball gown might be more appropriate." Tuesday simply had no idea, but somehow she doubted that she'd need the ball gown. "I'm sorry, but I have no idea what my journey might involve, so I'm hoping you might find me something appropriate," she said. The tree rustled its leaves as if in a light breeze, and Tuesday's pajama top changed into a blue t-shirt. Her pajama pants transformed into a pair of faded blue cotton shorts that were already soft and comfortable. Tuesday squeezed her ball of silvery thread into a front pocket. Then she watched in delight as a branch of the tree sprouted a russet pod that rapidly unfurled into a red jacket, and then another bloomed into a backpack that was neither too big nor too small, but just the right size. She had nothing to put into it, but she picked it up anyway. Then out of a hollow in the tree shot a pair of emerald green shoes that were the same shade of green as the roller shoes lying beneath her bed back in her house in Brown Street. But since these shoes had no wheels in the heels, Tuesday gathered that her journey was not going to be particularly smooth. Nevertheless, she slipped them on and tied the laces securely. They were a perfect fit and very comfortable. "Thank you," said Tuesday to the tree, which rustled its leaves a little more vigorously in response. She hurried down the hill to the edge of the cloud bank where Blake was waiting impatiently with a vigilant Baxter watching over him. Stay close, Blake said as he took a long stride into the misty whiteness. Almost instantly he disappeared. "Blake!" Tuesday called. He reappeared. "I said stay close," he said. "Could I hold your hand?" Tuesday asked. "I can't see anything." "You really are pathetic, aren't you?" he said, but he grinned as he held out a hand that Tuesday took gratefully in hers. "Don't worry, I've been here plenty of times, so we won't get lost." "Okay," said Tuesday, and the three of them set off into the cloud. The mist was not unpleasant to walk through. It was neither wet nor cold, and Tuesday fancied that it smelled faintly of cinnamon. The ground beneath her feet was a pathway of sorts made of stone, and the path was wide enough for the three of them to walk side by side. Despite the thickness of the mist that if Tuesday were alone would have had her putting her hands out in front of herself and hoping she wouldn't run into anything, Blake strode along at a good pace. "How do you know we're not going to fall off a cliff?" Tuesday ventured. "Because, as I said, I've been here before. This will all look, very different to you next time." "But there won't be a next time," Tuesday wanted to say. "Once I find my mother, I'm going home and I'll never come here again." But instead she concentrated on keeping up with Blake and trusted he was keeping them on the path. For a little while they strode along in silence. At last Blake said, "So, yesterday, whatchamacallit, who are your favourite writers?" "Serendipity Smith," Tuesday said, a little cautiously. "Have you heard of her?" "Heard of her? Are you serious? Of course I've heard of her," Blake said condescendingly. And then in a quite different tone he said, "Oh yeah, she's actually pretty cool." "Well, Serendipity Smith is..." Baxter gave a low growl and Tuesday stopped herself just in time from blurting out the secret that she'd kept utterly and perfectly for more than half her lifetime. She shook herself a little. What had she been thinking? Was it the strangeness of being here, the mist, the unreality of everything that had happened since last night that had made her, for a moment, almost blurt out the one thing she had sworn never to say? "My favourite author of all time," she finished. Never before had Tuesday wanted so badly to let the secret out. She had to clamp her lips together and catch her tongue behind her teeth. But Blake, who was a dark shape in the whiteness beside her, noticed none of this. "Except for her endings," said Blake. "I mean, why is Mothwood still alive? If it were me, I would have iced him at the end of the first book, but you know, that's just my style." Tuesday rolled her eyes, but she smiled because even if Blake was irritating and arrogant, he was also holding her hand in the fog and taking her to the library, and Tuesday felt certain that at last she was getting somewhere. And that, my dear friends, is the end of chapter 3. And I do just want to show you one of the illustrations of of Blake. This is from the American edition. And there is Blake trying to do up his shoelaces. So that is the end of story time for today. But I promised you a writing exercise, or at least I promised you an exercise. One of the things I'm really big on is imagination and creativity. And so because I dressed up today, and it's, in the real world outside, it's actually going to be Easter over the next few days. So my challenge to you is, why don't you think about a character from a book that you really love and see if you can make a costume. I know lots of you will have done this for book week, but if you've got some days home, while we're in isolation, it's kind of fun to be different characters on different days. So think about what you would like to do, how you would like to dress up, and you might even like to think what sort of story you would tell if you were that character, and write that down. So we did a writing exercise yesterday. You can start with any sentence that you want today. And once you get your costume on, have a feeling, feel the way that character feels because you've dressed up, and see what they have to say, and write a sentence or write a paragraph or write a page or write 3 pages, or maybe keep going from there. But see how it feels to take on a character, because that's what writers do. We have characters who come to visit us in our minds, and they talk to us, like Blake and Tuesday and the many other characters that you will meet along the way in Finding Serendipity. So enjoy. Have a lovely, lovely sleep. If this is the last thing you're doing tonight, I hope you have very sweet dreams, and I will see you for chapter 4 very soon. Bye.